Hey, welcome, friends, to another episode of the Somatic Hound podcast. I'm super excited today to speak with Mary Debono, the creator of Debono Moves. Mary is also a best-selling author of the book Grow Young with Your Dog. And this is a book I personally have read and done all the exercises in for myself and for the dogs. We'll get into how that all works, but welcome, Mary.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be here, Leah. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think I had actually found you so many years ago by searching Feldenkrais for dogs,
Ah.
and one of your YouTube videos came up. I think it was the one with the Springer Spaniel, and you're just gently,
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Dewey, yes.
yeah, and you're just teaching how to gently use like listening hands on the ribs and changing the dog's breathing with this really gentle, I don't even want to,
Yeah.
it's not a manipulation. It's,
No, no. Do you
so
want me
if
to
you want to
explain what I was
describe,
doing? Okay, I'll explain because okay, can I even give you back up a little bit and give you the origin story of that?
yes.
Okay. So decades ago, I was working with actually an Australian Shepherd named Rocky. And he had come to my office. I mean, obviously, his person brought him to my office. And this 11-year-old dog was basically dragging his hind legs. Okay. He just, you know how a lot, you see this a lot as dogs get older, they start to get really weak behind. And of course, his person had taken him to the vet. They did what they could, but he wasn't getting better. So it was recommended that he take his dog to see me to help improve his mobility. And, we literally had to just like help him get from the car, just the little walk to my office. Like he was just unable to do it. His legs were just buckling behind, dragging his feet. So anyway, Rocky lies down on the mat in my office. I start working with him, and I all I could say is I was just so grateful that I got to work with this dog. You know the feeling, right? Like when you're just like, how did I get so lucky? Like just to be in this position that I could, give some help to this dog. And I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. I really didn't. Of course, how would I know, right? So I'm working with him and I remember exactly what I was doing. I was doing what I call a lumbar lift, where I'm supporting his lower back muscles, which is really, really helpful for dogs that are like getting weak behind because they often start straining their lower backs. So I was doing that and I was just like overcome with this sense of gratitude. And in that moment, Leah, it was so interesting. I felt this unbelievable, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, like this connection with him where I could feel so much more. And it's like I had this warmth in my heart area. And I'm a science gal. Like I'm into neuroscience and all the nerdy stuff. I was a computer engineer in my first life. So just and but anyway, so I'm working with him and I noticed that once that had happened, it's like I could feel so much more about how to help Rocky. And it was the moment that I had my intention of being grateful that that changed. And so, long story short, I ended up doing a very technical session with Rocky as far as I used all my Feldenkrais strategies. I did all this. By the end of the session, he was walking. That's, we'll cut to the chase. But what I took from that session was that it was important for me because I teach this work, I teach it to people around the world, was important to set the stage, like set the environment for you and the animal. And I found that doing what I call this connected breathing that you saw me do with Dewey, the English with the Springer Spaniel, was you set that intention of gratitude and of just being present together. So you're absolutely right. It is not manipulation. We're not like trying to get the dog to breathe in a certain way, or we're not trying to regulate anyone's nervous system. What we're doing is we're just being present with each other and being so genuinely happy that we have the opportunity to be together, wherever that leads to. And so again, I teach this to people, and I do this with horses as well, and any animal, cats, and just having that sense of, oh, I'm listening to you. And with the connected breathing, you're just literally listening with your hands. That's why you accurately described it as a listening touch, right? So I'm also teaching the person who's doing it how to listen more with their hands. So important. It's the whole basis of this work. And you find that the dogs often, like, it resets their nervous system. And what's awesome is that the human gets that response as well in their own nervous system. So sorry to drag that out, but I had to give you the backstory because I realized, okay, this is an important part that I need to teach intentionally because I was just doing it automatically, but I realized my students needed to know that this is the foundation. Having that type of presence is really key to working with the dogs.
Yeah,
So,
that's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And so I'm assuming, but maybe we can go into this a little more about the background of how you created Debono Moves. My assumption is it comes from your foundation of Feldenkrais.
yes and no. So it's Feldenkrais method, which is an incredibly effective method that I use, and I do that with my human students and clients. Strongly informed the evolution of Debono moves. However, I was actually, what's interesting, doing my own version of it before I even took the Feldenkrais training,
Oh,
which I find really interesting. I was drawn to working with the sternum and the ribs in these very gentle ways, just because I grew up looking at canine movement. I had, my family had a dog that we trained, and we would show him and do all those things. And so much of it is about movement and all that. So I was doing that. And I think that's why when I stumbled onto the Feldenkrais method, it resonated 100% with me. It was like, okay, now I found it. And I've learned so much that has informed my work from the Feldenkrais method. Yeah, so that is a big part of Debono Moves for sure.
okay, that's so interesting. You are already intuitively developing this system. This happens in my life all the time where like I'm observing the
Yes.
dogs and I'm kind of getting it and I'm kind of developing my thing and then I'll come into contact with somebody else and I'm like, "Oh, that's what I'm doing. That's the system," but not quite. Like you still have your own unique
Yes.
way of doing it, and then it just becomes kind of like this convergence and kind of like
Yes.
a confirmation that like, oh yes, this is the path, but then you kind of also can develop your own unique um, system, which is what Debono Moves is. It's not massage, it's not chiropractic, it's not
Correct.
exactly Feldenkrais, although it's informed by it. It's really unique. And the thing that helped me so much was learning to lighten my touch
Yes.
and just kind of holding these really light positions of my hands and then allowing the dog's nervous system to respond. And you're kind of having like this conversation
Totally.
where you're not like, I'm not trying to fix the dog. The dog is just kind of coming into resonance on its own.
Wow, you said that so beautifully, Leah. That's it. That is it. And it's this conversation. You can call it a tactile conversation, kinesthetic conversation, all the things. It's like you are not fixing a problem. You are helping the dog by creating an environment where the dog can discover new options. So it's really, and the Feldenkrais method is described, by the way, and that's how I describe Debono Moves as somatic education.
Mm.
It's not, and you're absolutely right. It's very different than massage or chiropractic. That they're also wonderful things, but they're focused on structure, right? Like if this is tight, I'm going to do something manually. If I was a massage therapist, to maybe change the tonus of that muscle. Or if you were a chiropractor, you want to adjust and get the bones back aligned. We're not doing that. What we're doing instead is focusing on function, how we can help the dog discover more, like healthier, more comfortable function, movement through the nervous system.
Yeah, and one of my favorite quotes from the book is that the brain doesn't need big movements to stimulate new neural pathways. It just needs new ideas. And then you give so many examples of like introducing novel movement and non-habitual movement. And again, just like the gentle way that a dog lying on his side, you put a book under the feet to kind of replicate the feeling of standing on the floor. This actually blew my mind. I was like, how did you come up with this? That like,
No, I didn't come up with that one. Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais came up with that one. I
okay.
will say that. Yes, yes. Moshe Feldenkrais, who created the Feldenkrais method. I learned that from my Feldenkrais training. Yes, for sure.
Okay, cool. So if you can describe kind of how that
Yes.
works for the dog, that would be cool.
Oh, I would be so happy to do that. That is something I do quite a lot. And when I mentioned Rocky earlier, the dog, the 11-year-old Aussie, that was a key thing for him as well. So it's helpful for many dogs. So what you do is, and here I have a little coaster here. I'll use, and this is a nice little dog one. You can use actually the palm of your hand can be used, a coaster, a phone. You can use anything firm and flat. If you think about it, so if you put it, and I want to emphasize, this is a very specific strategy. It's not that anyone can start shoving on dogs' feet and expect, wonderful changes to happen, okay? However, what happens is, and this works for humans, that's why Moshe created it, is if you put something firm and flat against the feet, like in a human, you would need like the size of a book, or I use different things for people, obviously. When the individual is lying down and the nervous system feels that, then the nervous system starts to organize as if it was going to stand up,
Mm,
because you're sending those signals through the feet. Okay. But again, you need to be very, very educated in how to do it, because you can do it in such a way that you're actually creating very, very gentle waves of movement through the dog's skeleton to stimulate very specific things. So the with Rocky, for example, what I did was I put rollers, foam rollers, if, 3 inches in diameter, maybe for him. I usually wrap it in a towel. But what that does is it separates his legs. So if he's lying on his side, instead of the legs being like this, now they're like this. I want them where the joints are neutral
mm,
and they'd be about the width they would be if he was standing up. And what that does is that again now is uh, in alignment with what he would be doing if he was really standing up, right? And then you pair that with artificial floor where you're, you know, using something firm against the foot. Now the brain is like, oh, wow, that feels okay, because the dog isn't dealing with gravity, it isn't dealing with balance issues, it isn't dealing with any anticipation of pain. And suddenly now, yeah, so you're starting, this is where you mentioned about the new neural connections and all that. You're creating these new neural connections that are in a very safe way. This is the important thing. We want to associate the new movements with ease, pleasure, and safety,
mm.
right? And that's how the brain will learn and say, oh, that actually feels good. I can do that. So, I love these strategies, and that definitely all credit goes to Dr. Feldenkrais for that. Yeah, wonderful, wonderful stuff. Very useful.
Okay, and that would be a more advanced technique that people should learn from you.
Yeah, actually, I briefly mention it in the book, but I don't describe how to do it in the book because
Right.
they really do need, like, I teach longer programs where I do teach people how to do it, but it's very specific. So, yeah, yeah. But it gives people a taste of what's possible, right? You
Yeah, it
know, it's
was, yeah, it was fascinating. And it does open your mind to like, oh, we're giving the body and the nervous system an idea of standing without actually standing.
That's it exactly. That's it exactly. Can I tell you another quick story?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, this one's about a Chihuahua who had a stroke. His name was Chili. He had a stroke 18 days before I met him, and he was completely paralyzed on his right side. So he couldn't stand up, he couldn't do anything, and he had been released from the veterinary hospital. They said nothing else we can do. They suggested euthanasia.
Mm.
His person had read about me in some book or something, so she contacted me. She lives in the area. So I she arranged to bring him to my office. And so here he is, he's lying down, he can't do anything. I did a number of things, and I actually have a blog post where I detail out. I did 3 sessions with him. That was it. After the first session, which included all kinds of work with his legs in that way, he started walking the next day.
Whoa.
Yes. Yeah, he was a dog who could not move. Now, I didn't fix him. I don't fix anybody. And I just gave him the environment where his nervous system felt safe to explore. And then, of course, I gave him useful strategies, right? Like you said about the letting them experience the sensation of standing without the downside of actually standing, right? So things like that. And I remember, and again, this is in my blog post, so I do detail out that first session where where I, him and his person, we couldn't believe it. Here he was unable to move the legs on the right side at all. And I did a whole bunch of different things where it was giving him different sensations, and then suddenly, and feeling things against his feet. Suddenly, he pushed against the floor with both his right legs. We were like, "What just happened?" Isn't
Amazing.
it? Isn't it amazing?
There's so many parallels because I work pretty specifically with dogs who have emotional trauma and what people label as behavioral issues. Um,
Okay.
and a lot of times it's just a matter of giving them time, space, and safety to kind of heal from the inside out. Like, there's not anything, okay, there are some things we do that can help the dog, like physical, kind of somatic exercises to
Sure.
release certain emotions. But the biggest thing is just giving the dog a sense of safety, and then they
Yes.
kind of heal themselves from the inside out.
Yes. I love the way you said that. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Such a
yeah,
powerful approach, isn't it?
it's
What you do. In other
really,
words, yeah.
oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say like that idea because you're also, Leah, if you think about it, you're maybe that's an overused word, empowering, but you are giving agency to the dog,
Mm,
right? I mean,
yeah.
you so to me that's everything. Like that is then the dog can come from a place of confidence,
Hmm.
right? And that's how they get it. So I think that's really lovely what you're doing.
And it was so interesting because as I was going through your book and doing all the exercises and working with my dogs, my female dog actually tore her CCL and we did the TPLO surgery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was like so thankful that I had your book. And I've been doing the Debono moves that are in the book, and even just like the lumbar lift.
Yeah, that's the
It
exact one I thought of right away when you said that.
it's her
Yes.
favorite thing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I hope my vet isn't listening to this because my vet is wonderful and they did a fantastic job on the
Sure. Of
surgery.
course. Yeah.
But instead of following their kind of what do you call it, physical therapy moves, I've just been using your Debono moves. I mean, I followed their rehab plan of like keeping her on a leash and
Okay. Yeah.
limiting
It's important
movement
to
and all
follow the
that, but
vets. Yeah.
like the physical manipulations are a little old school, like where they want you to stretch the leg and kind of like push the dog to put weight on that leg. And I kind of let her decide when it was time for her to do weight bearing exercises. So it just helped me so much. And you actually have a story of Sunny, who had CCL surgery.
Yes.
And this is a really interesting case because the surgery went well, but he continued, I think, even up to 10 months later, was still
Yes.
limping. And the vet basically said there's really no reason
Nothing.
for the limp. Like physiologically, there's nothing wrong. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about how these patterns, which are protective, like when there's an injury, then kind of become, uh, they kind of outlive their usefulness or they almost become maladaptive.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, Sonny's a great example because he had a very dramatic, he's a dramatic example of a protective pattern, a compensation. So, obviously the surgery is painful for a while, right? The original injury was painful, and the surgery recovery is painful. And so he didn't want to put that foot down. And of course, his people did all the right things. And they kept taking him back to the vet because you never know. There could be an infection, that could be something that went wrong with the surgery. So the vet kept saying, no, there's no reason. They were imaging, they were doing all the things. And like you said, some of the s- rehab suggestions, I'll call them, can be not so useful because they'll tell you to try to force the dog to stand on the leg. But let's think about what happens when you do that. If, just say, a dog had injured the left hind, and that's the one that was repaired, obviously, dog doesn't want to put that toe down, doesn't want to weight bear, and now you force the dog to weight bear, right? Because you pick up the right hind. Now that dog, what's associated with weight bearing on that left hind? Fear,
Mm,
right? Even if there's no true pain, there's anticipation of pain, right? And then think about what happens. So maybe the dog does start to then use the leg, but what other compensations are happening? This is what I see a lot of. And this is why I'm so glad you're doing lumbar lifts with your dog, by the way, because oftentimes, as the dog is recovering, they're not truly using the leg the same way and they're tightening their back to adjust, to compensate for it. Okay. So now you have a dog, maybe the dog looks like they're walking fairly sound because they're putting their weight down on that leg, but they're creating, as you said, maladaptive patterns now, right? So that we don't want that. And we also don't want the dog to associate discomfort or, fear, anything like that with the movement.
mm,
So with a dog like Sunny, what I did was, I worked with him lying down and I did a lot of what we've already talked about, where I helped his nervous system feel as if it was standing up, but he didn't have any of the anxiety around standing up. He didn't have
mm,
to deal with balancing, he didn't have to deal with gravity, all those things. So that was one thing. But before that, I worked a lot with his back. I worked a lot with improving the mobility of his spine, helping him feel by supporting, like the lumbar lift, supporting the soft tissue that he could let that go. I did a whole bunch of things that had nothing to do with standing up in the obvious sense, but it was preparing him. I also worked a lot with his neck and shoulders because they had been taking a toll, having a toll taken on them. And Then when we got to, okay, now we're going to pretend like we're standing, but you're lying on your side, it was fine. Everything was just, there was no anxiety. Then when he stood up, which I helped him stand up, I helped him shift his weight on all three of the other legs.
Mm,
And we avoided the one that was repaired. Okay, we avoided it. And then as I saw him get better and better at this, right? Then I would just like sneak in a little bit of it and then go off of it. So I was able to do it in a way that did not disrupt his nervous system, that did not raise any red flags to say this is going to be painful, don't do it. So I kept it very safe and I wanted again to associate ease and pleasure with that activity, which is weight bearing on that leg. So, and it worked like a charm. Now, I saw him for several sessions. This didn't happen in one little session, but he went back to being 100% fine. So that's the type of situation where, again, we always want to think about, well, what are we doing? Like look at the big picture of it. Yes, we might force the dog to stand on the leg, but at what cost?
right.
So, yeah, so that's why I encourage people. I mean, I'll never encourage people to go against any veterinary
Of
advice, but I
course.
do encourage people to think about, okay, what is the bigger picture here and can we do this a different way?
Of course. I was just going to put that caveat
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
we love our vets. We should never purposefully go against what they're saying, but if
Right.
we can
Right.
kind of do what they're suggesting in a little bit more of a nuanced way, it might be helpful to the dog. Um,
Absolutely. And I love the word nuanced because I wanted to point that out. Earlier, you said about how sensitive, I think, and light your hands became, all that. That is key.
mm,
Because think about this, Leah. If you're working with a dog, and we're talking about like slight little differences, you have to be very, very light and sensitive in your own hands to be able to detect, oh, does my dog move a little easier onto this leg than that? Because the thing is, when you start to do this, you can start to find issues before they become major issues. So, yeah, so that nuance is really, really important. It's very subtle work, very gentle and very subtle.
yeah, we could take this in a bunch of different directions of like noticing imbalances before they become a problem.
Mm,
Um, I think maybe just people becoming familiar with their dog's gait, or how do you
yes.
suggest that they start with that?
Okay, a whole bunch of different ways. One of the easiest ways to start, and I do talk about this in my book as well, is just regularly running your hands really slowly down your dog. Like start when the dog is lying down. If maybe
Mm-hmm.
they like to lay on the sofa with you or on the floor or wherever they're comfortable and it's not feeding time, it's like when they're going to be really chill with you. And you just start to be familiar with, oh, this is what my dog's shoulder blade feels like on the left side. And you just like, and don't worry, like you don't need to know, for those listening who may not know anatomy, you don't need to. Like you don't need to know the names of muscles or anything. But you just start to let your nervous system, your own nervous system, your own brain know that this is important. So it's like you start feeling, because then you'll start to pick up differences. So you might notice, like, oh, it's interesting. On the left shoulder blade, there's this amount of muscling here. On the right, it's different. Or, oh, this is really curious how my dog's back changes shape. Like if you put your fingers right on the spine, and some changes are normal because the different vertebrae is structured differently. But you'll start to notice when things really do change. Maybe you start to notice there's a rounding of the dog's lower back, what they call a roached back, right? That's something that maybe you start to notice like before it becomes a big issue. And there are things you can do to help that. Or you might notice that your dog is using their hind legs unequally. So the muscle development is different.
Mm.
There's all these kind of things we can do that don't cost any money, just take a little bit of time. And, and also you may pick up other things. You may pick up a lump or a bump that shouldn't be there that you can then take your dog to the vet and point that out that, oh, so it really can be very, very useful for noticing things. And then things like the way the dog's, nails are being worn down, the paw pads are
Mm.
maybe different. All those kind of things will give you information about how the dog is moving. And then, of course, just looking at the gait itself. Like
Mm-hmm.
the big thing I see as dogs get older, a lot of dogs will go from a 4-beat walk where each leg moves independently to doing like a lateral movement, a pace,
Mm.
where the two legs on each side will move as one. Now, in some dogs, that is totally normal, especially in long-legged dogs, but for some dogs, that's 100% normal. What I would say is you want to examine it. You want to take your dog to the vet. You want to look into this. Is if your dog goes from usually doing a 4-beat to then pacing,
Mm.
because that will often tell you that their back is getting stiff. That's not the only reason that can happen, but that's a very common one.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I took a course earlier this year called Canine Conditioning, and I learned all the different gaits. And then I
Yeah, it's
started
fun.
noticing it is really fun, and you can get really geeked out about it. And
Yes.
I started taking videos of the dogs and putting them in slow
In
motion.
slow motion. Exactly.
So
That's awesome.
it's actually
Because you
really
might,
fun.
because you learn this as well, Leah, right? The different like leads in the canter gait. So you might notice that a dog always goes on the left lead no matter where the dog is turning or how, the environment. That's going to give you an indication that there's some imbalance there. There's some reason that the dog started to do that. So
Right.
yeah, that's super helpful. And I'll tell you, videos are great, aren't they? Because you can slow them down and really look at them. Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually really fun. But then another thing that came up when you were talking about Sunny was this idea of working with the legs weren't, that
Yes.
didn't have surgery. I want to be careful how I say it because
Yep.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
learned from you that you don't want to kind of project or kind of
Good or bad. Is that what you're going to say?
the
Like,
bad
because people,
leg,
yes. Yes.
the good leg and the bad leg.
Yeah, I really and thank you for noticing that, because I find that when people do that automatically, they'll say my bad knee or my dog's bad leg or whatever. And it's like, what are you putting on that? Like that actually makes a difference. So I often will say the more interesting leg, or
Ah,
or just like the surgically repaired leg. Like if I need to be that, specific, it's like the surgically repaired leg. But you're absolutely right. So thank you for mentioning that. And this is something that is very much a part of the Feldenkrais method for humans. So I do want to be clear. A lot of my work has been strongly informed by Dr. Moshe's teachings, Moshe Feldenkrais. Um, and the big thing is, as we mentioned earlier, we want to keep the nervous system feeling safe,
mm,
right? So when I work with the unaffected side, let's just say, right? The less interesting side, the dog doesn't have any reason to be alarmed about that, right? There's no anxiety about that. So that can start laying the blueprint for the other side. It's like, because again, we're communicating with the nervous system. So we can start
mm,
to engage with the nervous system in this curious way where the nervous system is paying attention to these novel sensations. And so we've already like I said, laid the foundation that then when we get to the other side, that's the more interesting side, right? The dog will already have had like this sensation of ease and safety generalized through their nervous system. That's really important to generalize a feeling of ease and safety.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I used to take I used to take some Feldenkrais lessons in person, but I also would
Oh, how
just
great.
like look up a YouTube video and
Mhm.
do that at home. And one of the channels I followed, we'd go all through one side of the body, like do all the
Yes.
left side. And then on one of the lessons, he was like, you know what? We don't even have to do the right side. And I was like, wait, what? And then I got up and I walked around and I was like, oh yeah, the left side's already feeling a lot better. I mean, the right side's already
Yep.
doing a lot better just from working on the left.
Yes. And isn't that okay? So this is so good, Leah. It it's so interesting, right? Because in our cult, like we're just habituated to say, oh no, we have to do the other side. Like we're going to be uneven. But number one, that's a strategy we often utilize because there's all kinds of ways to go with this. But one of the things to remember is if we're communicating with the nervous system and setting up the conditions for the nervous system to learn, the nervous system wants health and wholeness.
Mm,
So it will balance you out. So a lot of times that is true. We will sometimes, for example, with a dog who's injured, like or something, I may just work on the less interesting side, right? The side that wasn't injured, and there's improvement on the other side.
mm,
Again, just the same experience you had. So that is something that's big in the Feldenkrais method work. And also in those, what you're referring to, the awareness through movement lessons, right? And I teach those too as well for humans. What sometimes we do, and this really blows people's minds, we'll do only one side. Okay. So we only do one side. And then I'll say, okay, let's go on the other side and just do it in your imagination.
ah,
Oh, that's so good because people are like, what? And yes, and then at the end, and then I'll have them do it just once at the end, like maybe it's a reaching movement or whatever the like reference movement is, and it'll be a million times better. And they're like, well, what just happened? But we have to remember, again, we're communicating with the nervous system. When you clearly imagine a movement, you're stimulating the motor cortex in a very similar way to as if you were actually doing the movement.
yes.
And tell you something, I teach this in my work as well. I use imagination with the dogs. Now, I don't ask them to imagine because I'm not sure they understand me. So
They might.
they might. It's worth a shot. However, what I do is I suggest to my students that before you do a movement, like let's say lumbar lifts, you have your hands in place. You imagine doing it first. So you imagine doing the movement, that you're going to do the movement with
Mm,
the dog, and then you do it. And I find that most of the time, it's a better, more supportive, more effective move for the dog when the person imagines it first. I have my theories about this. One theory is when you're imagining a movement, you often are doing like a micro bit of that movement, aren't you? Right? Like if you just imagine moving your left index finger, you might be doing so it also sensitizes the person. It helps them feel more. And I feel they get like more prepared to do the movement in a smoother way because your awareness of yourself is so important when you're working with your dog because it's important that we transmit a sense of ease to the dog.
mm.
So when they imagine it first, it's like setting them up for that. So that's one way I use imagination with the dogs. Yeah.
That is so key, what you just said about setting yourself up first before you work with the
Yes.
dog. Because that's a big part, again, with the emotional side. What I'm
Yes.
working with, the human is often very tense and stressed out. And then the biofeedback between the dog and the human kind of spirals. And so that's why I especially love the connected breathing exercise that helped me so much get in a state of gratitude and feeling connected to the dogs before I even put hands. And and the book is so, I've told everybody, like, you got to get this book because the
Thank
Feldenkrais
you. Thank you.
lessons for the human and the fact that you're helping us understand, like, look, first you do your lesson,
Yes.
loosen your own body up and start feeling good in your own body. And then we're going to help the dog. And just the amount of audio lessons and video that come with the book, it's like taking a whole workshop of the
Thank you. Yes.
basics. Like, they
Yes.
would need further instruction to do the more advanced things. Um, but that just fascinated me. And I actually did all the lessons, and it definitely put me in a different kind of bodily state, like a nervous system, the correct, quote unquote, correct nervous system state to then like convey that sense of safety and that sensitivity to the dog.
Absolutely. Thank you for that because that is such a key part of the work is improving yourself along with the dog. That's the only way really you can best help the dog. And you mentioned about so many of your clients being stressed because probably they're having issues obviously with their dog. And it's the same thing even with mobility issues. People are worried, right? Like if God forbid something happens to your dog, you stress, you're
Mm.
worried, you want to help the dog as much as possible. But just like with you, we find that when people are doing it from that state of worry and tension, again, that's not going to be that effective. That's may backfire quite a bit. But taking those moments, so I'm so happy you talked about that connected breathing because just taking those few minutes, and I'm happy to give people access to a free training with the connected breathing and all that. I have a bunch of different things they can look at, video trainings. Um, that, like you said, totally can reset the nervous system for both the human and the dog. And one of the things I say all the time is how you move, how you breathe, and how you direct your attention are all felt by your dog and all shape your interactions with your dog. So it's like your underlying sense of either ease or effort influences your dog's behavior and feelings, right? Because if they feel that you're tense, as you know, right, that's a big part of your work, that's going to influence them. But even like how we move, how we, and how we're breathing. So think about those tense clients. I'm sure they're not breathing very, deeply. And so the dog feels that, and there's that vicious cycle that happens. I always say it's not a dog and a human. It's like a dog human system, right? It's like
Yeah.
you're influencing each other. It's like no longer just dog and human. It's those interactions you are influencing each other.
Yes, it's just like how we kind of traditionally have separated the mind and body, and now we're
Yes.
realizing that
Yes.
you kind of can't
You
separate the mind and
can't.
body.
You can't.
And then you look at there's the same sort of duality when we look at the human and the dog. There's
Yes.
really not that much separation in that system. It's really, whether you call it a family system or what,
Hmm. Hmm.
just that relationship is so deep and so connected on very many different levels.
And I'm
So I'm
I'm s-
sure you and I could talk for hours
I
about this
know, I
stuff, but
know.
I don't want to overwhelm people with too much
Okay,
information.
sure.
But um, of course, I'd love to include any links that
Absolutely.
you think
Yeah.
would be helpful, like the blog post and maybe the connected breathing. And then if there's anything else that I might have, missed that you think is a key part to that you want to share.
I think we hit a lot, but I would say probably that one of the biggest tools that we all have, we may have to learn how to develop it a little more, but It's curiosity.
Mm,
So if we can go from a mindset of trying to quote unquote fix our dogs or even fix ourselves to being curious, I call it compassionate curiosity, which is curiosity without judgment. And to know that whatever you're whatever you're dealing with, whether your dog has a physical issue, a behavioral thing that you don't think is appropriate, whatever it is, or whether you yourself have some physical issue going on or whatnot, is to think that the wisdom of the body like created that situation and the wisdom of the body can change it. And you can improve at any age or any level of conditioning. It's like there is some improvement. It doesn't mean that your 19-year-old dog is going to act like a puppy and start galloping up the hill. But I have found over and over that some degree of improvement is possible for anyone who's breathing.
that's so beautiful.
And yeah, so it's keep that in mind. It's like it's to me that and and even just embracing curiosity, it's a very youthful quality, right? Like think about little kids are curious. Puppies are curious, right? And so just being compassionately curious can be a wonderful gift for yourself and for your dogs.
That's awesome. Yeah, it creates this feeling or sensation of openness
Yes.
where we can take in information that maybe we didn't notice before or be open to like a new way of working with the body and working with our dogs because obviously stress creates like tension and contraction. So,
Hmm.
cultivating this compassionate curiosity would kind of help open things up again. So, that is beautiful. I love
Absolutely.
that so much. And I just want to thank you so much. I've been following your work and listening to your
Thanks.
podcast for years and finally got the book. You know, I do believe everything happens right on time.
Yeah.
Um, and it just had to cultivate in this particular way. And I'm just really grateful for your work and just want to say thank you for sharing this time with us.
Oh, thank you so much. This is super, super fun and an honor to be talking with you and sharing this with your listeners. So thank you so much. This is great.
Okay, thank you.